She is a passionate philosophy professor,
fitness professional,
and motivational speaker. She helps strengthen the body, but she also helps strengthen the mind.
The mind?
The mind.
For well over a decade, she has led philosophy courses within the University System of Georgia.
She leads group fitness classes in Atlanta,
as well as leading one-on-one personal training sessions. Let's all squat wisely with Kristen Hester.
How well do you know yourself? How much time do you spend getting to know yourself? How much time do you spend really examining your life, the choices you make, even the choices that you don't make? How much time do you invest really reflecting on that? The focus of the topic that I want to kind of dive in on today is the phrase that some of you have probably heard in a lot of these enlightened communities, conscious communities. They speak of knowledge of self. Knowledge of self will be the topic that I will focus on today. This probably won't be that long of an episode. I do have some stories to kind of support why I want to explore this topic. And I also have a quote that ties in. The quote comes from Socrates. Socrates has a quote that says, "The unexamined life is not worth living." According to Socrates, he says, the unexamined life is not worth living. You know, when I was a student, just a student in general, even from when I was a young student before I went to college, and then when I arrived to college, I had subjects that I struggled in. Subjects like math, subjects like science, and foreign language as well. And in those subjects, in order to be stronger, in order to try to be more successful, I would turn to some outside assistance in a tutor to try to strengthen those weak areas. For many people, subjects like math and science, as well as a foreign language, those are not subjects that you may just have a natural inner knowing or understanding about. So you turn to some outside help to try to make the difference. When I started my philosophy coursework as a student, though, the experience was very different. I did not feel the need to hire a tutor. I was not compelled to really look for a tutor. Of course, there were some subjects that were difficult. You know, in philosophy, there is a course known as logic, which kind of resembles math and science on some levels. But for the most part, for the average college student, you know, I went to school for philosophy, so I had a lot of different philosophy classes that I took. But for the average student who is just needing to take the basic intro to philosophy 101 type of course, most of it you will learn about, you know, great historical figures who may have contributed great things to philosophy. But a lot of their topics, though, a lot of the things that made some of these philosophers famous, a lot like Socrates and his quote, "The unexamined life is not worth living." These subjects really make you focus more on yourself as the subject. It makes you think within. It's not like math and science where you're needing to understand an equation and how to produce an answer. It's like you are the person who needs to produce the answer. You are the person who is the main focus. And I really appreciated that type of course because unlike math, unlike science, and unlike learning Spanish, philosophy was encouraging me to pay closer attention to myself, to better understand why I do the things that I do, or why I don't do certain things. So eventually I graduate, and now I am the college teacher. I am the one who is teaching the class requiring assignments and expectations of students. And when I realized the importance and the power of really being able to understand and bring a voice to who you are was during my very early journey into teaching online. When you teach online, a lot of colleges will require students to submit these introduction assignments. And they require that because unlike on campus, we don't have the luxury of that face-to-face interaction. So you don't really get to, make friends and all this stuff the normal way when you're online. So to try to build a sense of community, a lot of the colleges require students to just tell their classmates as well as the teacher a little bit about who they are. Nothing that's too revealing, just basic information about yourself as an icebreaker. And I remember a student submitting their introduction, and as soon as I saw it, I said something about this introduction is just a little bit too perfect. I could tell it was probably plagiarized. I didn't want to assume it, so I wanted to confirm it for myself. And so one thing that students don't realize, if you can find it online, your teacher can find it online as well. If you can find it in a book, your teacher can find it in a book as well. So that's pretty much what happened. I ran the assignment through an authenticity check, and I realized that this student had plagiarized their introduction. Now, this was not math. This was not science. This was not some foreign language that they may have limited understanding or knowledge in. They were the subject for this assignment. Not only were they the subject, they were the expert. I don't know of anyone who would struggle to tell you who they are, where they're from, their favorite meal, if they're married, if they have a dog, or whatever it is that people share when they introduce themselves. Again, you don't have to be overly revealing to just say basic stuff as an icebreaker. But this particular student felt compelled to cheat on this assignment about themselves. And what I have discovered years later is that even if it's not an assignment like an introduction, most people are more comfortable, like myself, finding a tutor to conquer math, finding a tutor to conquer science, doing everything they need to do to perfect their Spanish-speaking skills for their foreign language class. But as soon as the student becomes the subject, as soon as the student has to go within, the fear and the resistance soon follows. This is common for me in my world of teaching philosophy. This is common for me because I've had students who had to write a paper based on Socrates, the quote that he shared when he mentioned the unexamined life is not worth living. Even with college assignments and papers, it's never anything that's overly revealing that the student has to share. But just to contemplate on their lives, just to ask themselves questions that they may have never pondered because it, one, either made them uncomfortable, two, because for them to answer that question now, maybe they'll become accountable to something that they are not ready to be accountable to. You see, knowledge of self is powerful, but what is even more powerful is when we have assignments that require us to develop our knowledge of self. I've had students in general, they'll write me. I had one student, she said she decided to go into therapy because of my class. She decided to go into therapy because of my class. And she said, I need therapy because I realize that I have not dealt with some things that I've just kind of buried deep within. I've just kind of pushed it aside as if it's not there. But taking your class, if I'm going to be successful in this class, I am forced to confront some uncomfortable things about myself. And as much as I dislike it, she told me, this experience is helping me to grow. I had another student one time jokingly say, why does philosophy, make me pay attention to myself? I don't like that. I don't want to pay attention to myself. And I always tell students, but you'd rather invest 4 years going to someone's college, perfecting your knowledge in math, perfecting your understanding of science, perfecting your writing skills. And guess what? When you graduate, most of that math you're going to forget. Most of that foreign language you're going to forget. Same is true for science as well. But wherever you go, there you are. You are always the subject. You are always with yourself. You are always needing to know and understand yourself because you are always growing. You are always learning. You're always coming into a completely different perspective of who you are becoming as a person day by day. And while knowing math is great, you're still going to forget it shortly after you graduate. But you'll never be able to forget the essence of who you are. That's the good, that's the bad, that's the all of it. Because wherever you go, degree or not, there you will always be. So don't be this person that's like some of my students who fear confronting themselves. Don't fear asking yourself deep questions that you need to confront. Questions that help us to examine our lives, examine our actions, so we can actually live better lives. When you really stop and reflect on it, a lot of us, we live our lives on what some people call autopilot. You're just going with the flow. You're hustling, you're working, you're paying your bills, you're studying, you're trying to get those grades up. You're on autopilot. You're living for college. You're living for those grades. You're living for, earning those hours so you can get that check and pay those bills. And all of that is admirable. All of that is admirable. But there's a moment sometimes that's so profound that shifts our focus off autopilot. It could be arriving to my philosophy class. And all of a sudden, you're like slapped in the face with some reality that you have allowed life to distract you from. Because again, wherever you go, there you will always be. And we can allow school to distract us. We can allow the hustle and bustle of the daily grind to distract us. But life has a way of getting our attention. Whether it is a philosophy class, whether it's sickness to your body, whether it is the loss of a loved one, whether it is losing that job, getting kicked out of school. Wherever you go, there you will always be. And sometimes life will bring in disruptions that will quickly move you off of autopilot and smack dab into the full reality of yourself. And there'll be nothing that you can do to stop it. So why not embrace what Socrates said? Don't allow life to throw you off course. Confront head on your life by examining it. Asking yourself some of those hard questions you know are there, but you allow fear or even the busyness of life to stop you from confronting it. The unexamined life is not worth living. And it is not worth living because when we fail to examine our lives, our actions, our choices, we also fail to better know and understand who we are. In order to know yourself, you have to dive